Since the beginning of time, people have asked a big question: who created God? We look around and see that everything has a cause. A tree grows from a seed, a baby is born from parents, a house is built by workers. Everything seems to come from something else. But when we ask, where did God come from? The answer is often, God was always there. This idea can be confusing. If everything needs a cause, then shouldn't God need one too? But many religious beliefs teach that God is different from everything else. They say God has no beginning and no end. God just exists. This idea is called eternity. It means God was never created because he was always there. In different religions, God is described as the creator of everything. In Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, God is seen as the one who made the universe, the stars, and life itself. These religions teach that while everything else had a starting point, God did not. In Hinduism, some teachings suggest that the universe itself may be eternal, repeating in endless cycles. But in most religious traditions, God is described as the one being who does not need a cause. People have not always been encouraged to ask where God came from. In the past, questioning this could get someone in trouble. Religious leaders and believers often saw it as a challenge to their faith. Many thought it was disrespectful to doubt God's existence. Some feared that too many questions could lead people away from their beliefs. So for a long time, people were told to simply accept that God was eternal without asking further. Even today, people still wonder about this question. Some believe that faith means accepting that God has no creator. Others think that if everything must have a cause, then maybe God does too. Or maybe the universe itself is eternal instead of God. It's a question that has puzzled great thinkers for thousands of years, and it still remains one of the biggest mysteries of all time. For centuries, great thinkers have debated whether God exists. Some believe in God without question, while others argue that there are deep problems with the idea of a divine creator. Philosophers have challenged the idea of God using logic and reason. Some of the biggest challenges come from ideas about infinite regress, the prime mover, and skepticism about causality. One of the biggest challenges to God's existence is called infinite regress. This means that if everything needs a cause, then what caused God? And if something created God, then what created that? And so on, forever. This creates an endless chain of causes with no clear starting point. Some philosophers argue that this makes no sense. If everything must have a cause, then God must have one too. Others believe there must be a first cause that started everything. And they say that first cause is God. The famous Greek philosopher Aristotle thought about this problem a lot. He believed that everything in the universe is in motion because something caused it to move. But if we keep asking what caused each thing to move, we would go back forever. So he came up with the idea of a prime mover, something that started everything but was never moved by anything else. He said this prime mover must be God. That centuries later, a Christian philosopher named Thomas Aquinas expanded on Aristotle's idea. He argued that everything in the world has a cause, and if we go back far enough, there must be a first cause that itself was never caused. He called this the uncaused cause, which he believed was God. This idea became one of the strongest arguments for God's existence in religious philosophy. Not everyone agreed with Aristotle and Aquinas. David Hume, a philosopher from the 1700s, was skeptical about causality, the idea that everything must have a cause. He argued that just because things seem to follow a pattern of cause and effect, that doesn't mean they always will. Maybe the universe doesn't need a cause at all. Maybe it just exists without explanation, just like some people say God does. Then came Friedrich Nietzsche, a philosopher who famously said, "God is dead." He didn't mean that God had literally died, but that people no longer needed God to explain the world. In ancient times, people turned to God for answers to everything. But as science and reason developed, Nietzsche believed that humans could find meaning and purpose without relying on religion. These philosophical challenges don't completely prove or disprove God's existence, but they make people think deeply about the question. Some still believe in a divine creator, while others think the universe can exist without one. The debate has lasted for thousands of years, and it's not going away anytime soon. Both the Bible and the Quran teach that God is eternal, meaning he has always existed and was never created. In these religious texts, God is described as the all-powerful creator of everything. The Bible, Christianity, and Judaism. The first book of the Bible, Genesis, says that, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This means that before anything else existed, God was already there. He spoke the universe into existence, creating light, the sky, the land, the animals, and finally, human beings. God is seen as the ultimate designer and ruler of everything. The Quran, Islam. Similar to the Bible, the Quran teaches that God, Allah, is eternal and the creator of everything. The Quran says, "He begets not, nor is he begotten," Surah Al-Ikhlas, meaning God was never born and has no creator. He simply exists beyond time and space, bringing the universe into existence by his will. Both religious traditions believe that God does not need a creator because he exists outside of time and space. He is self-sufficient, meaning he does not depend on anything else to exist. Hinduism has a different way of looking at creation. Instead of believing in a single creator, God who made the universe from nothing, Hindu philosophy teaches that the universe is eternal and constantly goes through cycles of creation, destruction, and rebirth. At the center of Hindu thought is Brahman, the ultimate reality that is infinite, unchanging, and eternal. Everything in the universe is a part of Brahman, and all things come from it and return to it. Instead of a one-time creation event, Hinduism believes in cosmic cycles. According to Hindu texts, the universe goes through endless cycles of birth, existence, and destruction. This is represented by the Hindu god Shiva, who performs the cosmic dance of creation and destruction. Unlike the biblical and Quranic view, Hinduism does not see Brahman as a personal god who creates the universe at a specific time. Instead, existence itself is eternal, and creation is a natural process that happens over and over again. The ancient Greeks had many different ideas about how the universe was created. Some of these ideas came from myths, while others came from philosophers who tried to explain creation using reason and logic. Greek mythology. According to Greek myths, in the beginning there was chaos, a vast emptiness. From chaos came the first gods, including Gaia, earth, and Uranus, sky. These gods gave birth to the Titans, who later gave birth to the Olympian gods like Zeus. The Greeks believed that the world was shaped by the battles and actions of these gods. Greek philosophy. While myths explained creation with gods and supernatural forces, Greek philosophers like Plato and Aristotle looked for logical explanations. Plato believed that a divine craftsman, called the demiurge, shaped the universe using eternal forms and patterns. Aristotle, on the other hand, thought that the universe had always existed and was moved by a prime mover, similar to later Christian and Islamic ideas of God. One of the biggest reasons people doubt God's existence is the problem of suffering and evil. If God is all-powerful and all-loving, why is there so much pain in the world? Philosophers like Epicurus and David Hume argue that an all-good, all-powerful God wouldn't allow suffering. Since suffering exists, either God isn't all-powerful, isn't all-good, or doesn't exist at all. The theological response. Religious thinkers argue that suffering serves a purpose, it tests faith, builds character, or results from free will. The emotional weight of the question. People like Stephen Fry have passionately criticized the idea of a good God by pointing to diseases, natural disasters, and innocent suffering. His argument isn't just logical, it's deeply emotional. This debate isn't just theoretical, it's personal. It touches on the most painful aspects of human life and forces people to question what they believe. Many people turn to science, philosophy, or religion to answer this question, but each approach has its own limits. Science explains how the universe works, but it doesn't fully answer why there is a universe in the first place. The Big Bang Theory tells us that the universe had a beginning, but it doesn't explain where the laws of physics came from or why there is something instead of absolute nothingness. Philosophy explores possible explanations, but every answer leads to more questions. Some philosophers argue that existence is just a brute fact, something that doesn't need an explanation. Others, like Leibniz, insist there must be a reason for existence, even if we don't know what it is. Religion often answers the question by saying God created everything. But this leads to another question. Why does God exist? If God is the explanation for existence, why does God exist instead of nothing? This makes the mystery even deeper. Each of these approaches offers insights, but none provide a final, undeniable answer. Even if we accept that something exists, we still don't fully understand what existence means. Is the universe just a random accident, or does it have a purpose? Is meaning something we create, or does it exist on its own? If everything eventually fades away, does meaning even matter? Philosophers like Nietzsche argued that meaning is something humans create. Others, like Camus, believe that life is absurd because we search for meaning in a universe that doesn't provide one. Religious traditions, on the other hand, claim that meaning comes from a higher power. No matter the perspective, the question of why anything exists at all remains one of the greatest mysteries of human thought. Maybe the real beauty of this question isn't in finding an answer, but in the fact that we can ask it at all. The universe is vast, mysterious, and beyond full comprehension. Whether you find meaning in God, science, philosophy, or simply in the experience of being alive, the fact that we exist to wonder about existence is extraordinary. Perhaps some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only appreciated.